preached to the lost, their train would come. I think that being a little different in a Canadian high school, especially in a small town in the 50s, you were a loner. I mean, if you were in a major city, at least you could find somebody else who was as weird as you were to hang out with. I think that it became less difficult for me when I realized that it wasn't that I would not conform, but rather that it was impossible for me to conform. And at that point, I really just started to go with it. Every night when the sun goes in.
Sylvia Tyson became fascinated by traditional music through a love of words and literature. At an early age, she moved to Toronto and created some history of her own.
I hang my head and mournful cry. Both Ian and I had always had very different tastes in music and had come from very different musical backgrounds. And to a certain point, that simply added, some interesting tension to the music. It just so happened that the first song that Ian ever wrote was Four Strong Winds, and the first song I ever wrote was You Were on My Mind. Start up this morning, you were on my mind. I'm not a particularly nostalgic person, but yes, those were really good days, and I think that everybody in any kind of creative area has a period of time in their life when they really are hanging out and absorbing influences, and that's what that time was for me.
Ian and Sylvia moved in an elite circle of artists from Toronto's Yorkville scene to New York's Greenwich Village. Constantly looking for new material and new means of expression, they created the Great Speckled Bird, pioneering a hybrid of folk, country, and rock. It proved alienating to their traditional folk audience.
To understand the initial reaction to the Great Speckled Bird, you have to understand just how closely connected people felt to the original Ian and Sylvia's sound, which was an acoustic sound. And it was a shock for them. It's really quite ironic because the Great Speckled Bird album is now considered to be sort of a seminal album in sort of the new country folk sound.
I'm never alone now. When I think of you, I can see your face smiling. Whatever I do.
Sylvia sees herself as a songwriter first. Like many Canadian authors, from Leacock to Lawrence, she specializes in finely drawn portraits of small-town life that reveal a universal experience.
I've certainly had some success as a country singer, mainly with the story songs, the songs like River Road and Regine and Trucker's Cafe. I do find that sometimes those are a way to avoid writing about really personal stuff. I realized at a certain point that I could not be afraid that people might find out something about me from my songs. And so my feeling at this point is, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.